Ji-won Kim stared at her computer screen in the Seoul Observatory. The numbers made no sense. 3 large objects were moving toward Earth, and they were big. Very big. This can't be right, she said to herself. She checked the computer again. The objects were still there, getting closer every hour. Ji-won had been watching space for 10 years. She knew what asteroids looked like. She knew what satellites looked like. These things were different. They moved in straight lines like they had engines, like they were controlled. She picked up her phone and called her boss. Dr. Han, you need to see this. 20 minutes later, Dr. Han stood behind Ji-won's chair. His face was pale. How long? Until they get here? 2 days, Ji-won said. Maybe less. Dr. Han was quiet for a long time. Then he said, call the government. Call everyone. Commander Zephys stood on the bridge of his warship. Through the large window he could see a blue and green planet getting bigger. Earth. Their new home. The Veltari had traveled for many years to get here. Their own planets were dying. The air was bad. The water was almost gone. They needed a new place to live, and Earth was perfect. Zephys was tall and thin like all Veltari. His skin was pale white, and his eyes were large and black. He had led many missions before, but this was the most important one. Sub-Commander Nexar, he said to his second-in-command. Are the weapons ready? Yes, Commander, Nexar replied. The humans will not be able to fight us. Our ships are stronger. Our weapons are better. This will be easy. Zephys nodded. The Veltari had studied Earth for months. The humans were still using simple rockets to get to space. They fought with metal bullets and small explosions. The Veltari had energy weapons that could destroy cities. Good, Zephys said. We will take what we need. The humans can live in the areas we don't want. In Seoul, the emergency meeting was chaos. Government officials shouted at each other. Military leaders looked at maps. Scientists tried to explain what was coming. Minho Park, a Korean military commander, stood at the front of the room. He was a short man with gray hair, but his voice was strong and clear. Listen, he shouted. Everyone got quiet. Fighting among ourselves won't help. We have less than 2 days before they arrive. We need to prepare. Prepare for what? Asked a politician. You saw the size of their ships. We can't fight them. Minho looked around the room. Maybe we can't win, but we can make them pay for every piece of ground they take. A general raised his hand. What about other countries? Are they preparing too? Everyone is, Minho said. The Americans, Europeans, Chinese, Russians, everyone knows what's coming. We're all sharing information now. Ji-won, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Commander Park, I've been studying their approach. They're not trying to hide. They want us to see them coming. Why? Minho asked. Because they think we'll give up without a fight, Ji-won said. They want us to be scared. Minho smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Then they don't know humans very well. Dr. Hana Lee was working late at Busan Medical Center when the news came on TV. She stopped bandaging a patient's arm and stared at the screen. Alien ships confirmed approaching Earth, the news reporter said. Government officials urged citizens to remain calm and stay indoors. The patient, an old man, looked at the TV too. Doctor, what does this mean? Hana finished wrapping his arm. I don't know, she said honestly. But I think we're about to find out what humans can do when we have no choice. She had seen people do amazing things when they were desperate. She had seen mothers lift cars to save their children. She had seen injured soldiers crawl miles to get help for their friends. When humans had nothing left to lose, they became something different. Taeyang Choi was only 22 years old. He had joined the Korean military 1 year ago. Now he stood with his unit near the DMZ, the border between North and South Korea. They were the first line of defense. His hands shook as he checked his rifle. The other soldiers looked scared too, but they stayed at their positions. Choi, his sergeant called. You okay? Yes, sir, Taeyang lied. The sergeant walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. You know what my grandfather told me about war? No, sir. He said the enemy can have better weapons and more soldiers, but they can't have what we have. What's that, sir? Nothing left to lose, the sergeant said. When you fight for your home, for your family, for everything you love, you become dangerous in ways the enemy can't understand. The first alien ship entered Earth's atmosphere at dawn. It was huge, bigger than any building. It moved slowly, over Seoul, casting a shadow over the entire city. People ran through the streets. Cars crashed into each other. Sirens wailed everywhere. But some people didn't run. They stood on rooftops and took pictures with their phones. They wanted the world to see what was happening. Commander Zephys watched from his ship as humans scattered below. Everything was going as planned. Soon they would surrender and the Veltari could begin taking what they needed. He opened a communication channel to all humans on Earth. His voice boomed from every TV, radio, and phone on the planet. "Humans of Earth," he said in perfect English. "We are the Veltari. We have come to claim this world. You have 1 hour to surrender. If you do not resist, some of you may continue to live here. If you fight us, you will all die." The channel closed. Zephys waited for the surrender. 1 hour passed, then 2 hours. No surrender came. Instead, something else happened. From every city, every country, every small town on Earth, the same message was broadcast back to the alien ships. It was simple. It was in 100 different languages, but it meant the same thing everywhere. Come and take it. Minho Park stood in the military command center in Seoul. Around him, screens showed alien ships over every major city on Earth. His radio crackled with reports from around the world. "Sir," a communication officer said, "we're getting messages from other countries. Everyone is saying the same thing." "What's that?" "No surrender. We fight." Minho nodded. He had expected this. Humans were strange creatures. The more hopeless things looked, the more stubborn they became. He picked up his radio and spoke to all Korean military units. "This is Commander Park. The aliens think we'll give up because their ships are bigger. They think we'll quit because their weapons are stronger. They're about to learn something about humans that no alien species should ever have to learn." He paused, looking out the window at the massive alien ship floating over his city. "They're about to learn that humans don't fight fair. And when we have nothing left to lose, we don't fight to win. We fight to make sure the enemy regrets ever meeting us." As the sun set over Earth, 3 massive alien ships hung over the major continents. The invasion was about to begin. The Veltari prepared their weapons, confident in their superior technology. The humans prepared too, but not in the way the aliens expected. In bunkers and basements, in hidden rooms and secret meetings, humans began planning something that no logical, civilized species would ever think to do. They began planning to weaponize their own suffering. The real war was about to begin. The first Veltari ground troops landed near the DMZ at sunrise. Commander Zephys watched from his ship as 50 of his best soldiers stepped out of their landing craft. They wore shiny armor and carried energy weapons that could cut through metal. The Korean soldiers waiting for them looked pitiful by comparison. They had old rifles, dirty uniforms, and scared faces. This would be over quickly. "Begin the attack," Zephys ordered. Tae-young Choi crouched behind a concrete barrier with 5 other Korean soldiers. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. The alien soldiers were walking toward them, their weapons glowing blue. "Remember the plan," his sergeant whispered. "Don't try to kill them. Just make them uncomfortable." Tae-young thought. The sergeant was crazy. "How do you make aliens uncomfortable?" The sergeant pulled out a small speaker and pressed a button. Suddenly, the air filled with the most horrible sound Tae-young had ever heard. It was human screams mixed with loud metal. Music played so loud it hurt their ears even through their ear protection. The alien soldiers stopped walking. They looked at each other, confused. Then the sergeant pressed another button. Now the screams were mixed with the sound of babies crying, car crashes, and people begging for help. All played at the same time, all as loud as possible. The aliens started moving slower. Some of them were shaking their heads like the sound was hurting them. "It's working," the sergeant whispered, smiling. "Keep playing it." Commander Zephys frowned as he watched his soldiers on the ground. They were moving strangely, like they were sick or confused. "Sub-Commander Nexar," he called. "What's happening?" "Down there?" Nexar was studying the screens. "The humans are playing some kind of audio transmission. It seems to be disturbing our troops." "Disturbing them how?" "I'm not sure, sir. Our soldiers report feeling strange, anxious. They say the sounds make them think about things they don't want to think about." Zephys had never heard of such a thing. "It's just noise. Tell them to ignore it." But the Veltari soldiers couldn't ignore it. The sounds got into their heads and stayed there. They had never heard anything like human screaming before. On their worlds, death was quiet and clean. This was something else entirely. In Seoul, Minho Park watched the battle reports with growing excitement. The aliens had better weapons, but they were moving slower than expected. Something was wrong with them. "Sir," a communication officer said, "we're getting reports from around the world. The same thing is happening everywhere. The aliens don't like our psychological warfare." Minho had learned about psychological warfare from studying human history. Humans had been scaring their enemies for thousands of years. They used war cries, scary masks, and loud noises to make enemies afraid. But this was different. The aliens weren't just afraid. They seemed to be having some kind of mental breakdown. "Get me Dr. Ji-won Kim," Minho ordered. Ji-won arrived at the military command center an hour later. She had been studying the alien communications, trying to understand how they talked to each other. "Commander Park," she said, "I think I know why our psychological tactics are working so well." "Tell me." Ji-won pulled out her tablet and showed him charts and graphs. "The Veltari communicate very differently than we do. Their language is all about logic and facts. They don't have words for emotions like fear, anger, or sadness." Minho stared at her. "Are you saying they don't feel emotions?" "I think they feel them, but they don't understand them. When we play sounds of human suffering, it creates feelings they can't process. It's like their brains don't know what to do with those feelings." Minho smiled. "So we're giving them emotions they've never had before?" "Exactly, and it's paralyzing them." Dr. Hana Lee was treating wounded soldiers when the first alien prisoner was brought to her hospital. The Veltari soldier was not injured, but he was shaking and making strange noises. "What's wrong with him?" asked the Korean soldier who brought him in. Hana examined the alien carefully. His large black eyes were moving rapidly back and forth. His pale skin was covered in sweat. His breathing was fast and shallow. "I think he's having a panic attack," Hana said. "Aliens can have panic attacks?" Hana had studied psychology as well as medicine. She recognized the signs. "This creature is experiencing severe anxiety. Something scared him so badly that his mind can't handle it." She tried to calm the alien down, speaking softly and moving slowly. Gradually, he stopped shaking. Through a translator device, she asked him what had happened. "The sounds," the alien whispered. "The terrible sounds your people make. They put pictures in my head. Pictures of pain and death and sadness. We don't have words for these feelings. We don't know how to make them stop." Hana realized something important. The aliens weren't just losing because of human weapons. They were losing because humans had introduced them to emotions they couldn't handle. Back at the DMZ, Taeyang's unit had captured 3 more alien soldiers without firing a single shot. They just played the horrible sounds until the aliens sat down and wouldn't move anymore. "This is the strangest war I've ever seen," Taeyang said to his sergeant. "It's not strange," the sergeant replied. "It's just human. We've been through so much pain in our history that we know how to use it as a weapon." Taeyang thought about his grandfather who had fought in the Korean War. His grandfather had told him stories about surviving in the cold, about watching friends die, about eating tree bark to stay alive. Those stories had made Taeyang sad, but they had also made him proud of how strong humans could be. "Sergeant," Taeyang said, "what if we made the sounds even worse?" The sergeant looked at him with interest. "What do you mean?" "What if we added the sound of children asking why over and over again? My little sister used to do that. It drove everyone crazy. The sergeant's eyes lit up. You know what? That might be the most evil thing I've ever heard. Let's try it. Commander Zephys was no longer calm. Half of his ground troops had stopped fighting and were just sitting on the ground staring at nothing. The other half were moving so slowly they might as well not be fighting at all. Sub-Commander Nexar, he said, I need an explanation. How are these primitive humans defeating our superior forces? Nexar looked uncomfortable. Sir, I think the problem is that they're not fighting us the way we expected. They're not trying to kill us with weapons. Then what are they doing? They're trying to hurt our minds, and it's working. Zephys felt something he had never felt before. A cold feeling in his chest, a worry that things were not going according to plan. If he had known human words, he would have called it fear. Send more troops, he ordered. Sir, I'm not sure that's wise. Every soldier we send down there comes back changed. They can't stop thinking about the sounds the humans make. Some of them won't eat, some of them won't sleep. They just sit and stare. Zephys looked out at the planet below. Such a small, blue world. How could its people be so dangerous? Around the world, the pattern was the same. Human forces were using psychological warfare that the aliens couldn't handle. In America, soldiers played recordings of people singing sad songs while explosions went off in the background. In Europe, they broadcast the sound of old people crying, mixed with children laughing in a way that sounded wrong. In Russia, they had discovered that the aliens were especially disturbed by the sound of humans arguing with each other. Something about conflict without resolution made the Veltari very upset. The Chinese had found that the aliens couldn't handle the sound of people being happy and sad at the same time, like at a funeral, where people told funny stories about the dead person. Everywhere humans fought, they used their own emotional complexity as a weapon, and everywhere, the aliens were breaking down. Jiwan was in the command center when the first alien surrender came in. It wasn't from a military unit. It was from individual soldiers who had wandered away from their units and were just walking around in circles, crying. Commander Park, she said, I think we're winning. Minho couldn't believe it. How? They have better technology, bigger ships, more advanced weapons. But they don't have what we have, Jiwan said. They don't have the ability to be happy and sad at the same time. They don't understand suffering that makes you stronger. They don't know how to be afraid and brave at the same time. So what you're saying is, what I'm saying is that human emotions are so complicated that they're literally driving the aliens insane. Minho laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just realized that humanity's greatest weakness had become their greatest weapon. Well, he said, I guess they picked the wrong planet to invade. That night, as reports came in from around the world, one thing became clear. The invasion was not going as the Veltari had planned. They had expected to fight human weapons and human technology. Instead, they were fighting the human soul, and they were losing. 6 months had passed since the invasion began. Commander Zephys sat alone in his quarters, staring at reports he couldn't understand. His hands were shaking. He had started shaking 3 months ago, and couldn't make it stop. Out of 10,000 Veltari soldiers, only 2,000 were still able to fight. The rest sat in corners, rocking back and forth, making small crying sounds. Some refused to eat. Others wouldn't sleep because they had nightmares about human voices. The worst part was that the humans weren't even trying to kill them anymore. They had figured out something much more effective. Commander, Sub-Commander Nexar's voice came through the speaker. The humans are broadcasting again. Zephys closed his eyes. What is it this time? Children singing lullabies while bombs explode in the background. And there are old people telling stories about their dead pets while laughing and crying at the same time. Zephys felt that cold feeling in his chest again. It had been getting stronger every day. His people had no word for it, but if he spoke human language, he would call it despair. Turn off all receivers, he ordered. I don't want anyone hearing it. But it was too late. The sounds were already in their heads. Once a Veltari heard, Human emotional complexity, they couldn't forget it. It changed something in their brains that couldn't be changed back. On Earth, Minho Park stood in his command center, watching screens that showed alien soldiers around the world. Most of them were just sitting, doing nothing. Some had taken off their armor and weapons and were walking around like lost children. "Sir," a communication officer said, "we're getting a message from the alien ship. It's not a military message." "What do you mean?" "It sounds like one of them wants to talk. Not about surrender, just to talk." Minho was surprised. In 6 months of war, the aliens had never tried to have a conversation. "Put him through." The voice that came through the speakers was shaky and quiet. "Hello, humans. My name is Sub-Commander Nexar. I need to ask you something." "Go ahead," Minho said. "Why do you hurt yourselves to hurt us? I watched your soldiers sing happy songs while setting off explosions that could kill them. I watched your people tell jokes while crying. I don't understand how you can feel so many things at once." Minho thought about the question. How do you explain being human to someone who isn't? "Because," Minho said slowly, "feeling many things at once is what makes us human. We can be scared and brave. We can be sad and hopeful. We can love someone so much that we're willing to die for them." There was a long silence. Then Nexar spoke again. "It's making us sick. My people, we can't think straight anymore. Everything feels wrong. We came here to take your resources, but now we just want the feelings to stop." Dr. Hanali had been working with captured Veltari for months now. Her hospital had become part prison, part mental health clinic. She had learned more about alien psychology than any human in history. The alien sitting across from her was named Keth. He had been a soldier, but now he spent most of his time staring at the wall and asking questions that had no answers. "Dr. Lee," Keth said in broken English, "why do humans choose to be sad?" "What do you mean?" "I watched human video files. I saw humans watching stories that made them cry. They chose to watch them. They paid money to be sad." "Why?" Hana had to think about that. "Because sometimes being sad helps us feel more alive. It reminds us that we care about things." Keth's large eyes got even larger. "You make yourselves feel bad? To feel good?" "Sometimes, yes." Keth made a sound that might have been alien crying. "No wonder we cannot fight you. You are weapons that hurt yourselves to become stronger. We don't understand this. We cannot learn this. It breaks our minds to try." Taiyang Choi had become something of a legend among the human forces. His idea about making children ask why repeatedly had become one of the most effective weapons against the aliens. But lately, he had started to feel bad about what they were doing. He sat with his sergeant outside Seoul, watching a group of alien soldiers who had wandered away from their base. They were walking in circles, talking to themselves. "Sergeant," Taiyang said, "do you think we're being cruel?" His sergeant looked at the aliens and sighed. "Maybe, but they came here to take our world. They wanted to make us slaves or kill us. But look at them, they're like broken children now. That's the thing about war, Taiyang. Sometimes you have to break the enemy to save yourself. The question is, what kind of person does that make you?" Taiyang watched one alien soldier sit down and start drawing pictures in the dirt with his finger. The pictures were all of humans crying. Even when they tried to make art, the aliens couldn't get human suffering out of their heads. "I think," Taiyang said slowly, "it makes us human. For better and worse." Jiwon Kim was in her laboratory, studying alien communication intercepts. What she had discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The Veltari were sending messages back to their home worlds, but the messages made no sense. They were trying to describe human emotions, using words that didn't exist in their language. 1. Message read: "The humans make themselves feel the bad thing that makes water come from eyes, but they also feel the good thing that makes them strong. This is impossible, but they do it. It hurts our thinking place to see it." Another message was worse: "Send no more soldiers. The humans have a sickness of the mind that spreads to us. They feel too many things at once. It is like poison for our thoughts. Ji-won realized that the aliens were trying to warn their people about humanity. They were describing humans like they were some kind of mental disease. She called Minho immediately. "Commander, you need to see this. The aliens think we're contagious." "What do you mean?" "They think human emotions spread like a virus. They're warning their homeworlds not to come here because we'll make them crazy too." Commander Zephys had not left his quarters in 2 weeks. He had been watching human television broadcasts, trying to understand what had gone wrong with the invasion. But everything he watched made him feel worse. He had seen a human movie about a mother who died saving her child. The humans watching it cried, but they also smiled. They felt sad and happy at the same time. It made no sense. He had seen humans at funerals telling funny stories about dead people and laughing while tears ran down their faces. He had seen human soldiers singing songs about missing home while marching toward danger. Everything about humans was backwards and upside down. They embraced pain. They found strength and weakness. They felt multiple emotions that should cancel each other out, but somehow made them stronger instead. Sub-Commander Nexar entered his quarters without permission. Nexar looked terrible. His pale skin was almost gray, and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Commander," Nexar said, "we need to leave this place." "We can't leave," Zephys replied. "We need the resources. Our worlds are dying. Our soldiers are dying too. Not their bodies, but their minds. Half of them won't speak anymore. The other half won't stop asking questions that have no answers." Zephys looked at his second in command. "What questions? Why do humans sing when they're afraid? Why do they tell jokes when they're dying? Why do they choose to feel pain when they could feel nothing? These questions are driving us insane because we cannot answer them." That night, something unprecedented happened. A group of 50 Veltari soldiers walked up to the gates of Seoul and asked to surrender. Not because they were defeated in battle, but because they couldn't handle being near humans anymore. The Korean guards didn't know what to do. The aliens weren't fighting. They were just standing there looking lost and confused. Minho came to see them personally. Through a translator, he asked their leader why they wanted to surrender. "Because," the alien soldier said, "being near your kind is changing us. We think about things we never thought about before. We feel things we don't have names for. We cannot make it stop. Please just keep us away from other humans. We cannot handle any more of your humanness." Minho realized something incredible. The war was over, but not because anyone had won or lost. It was over because the aliens literally couldn't psychologically handle being around humans. "Dr. Lee," he called on his radio, "we're going to need a lot more therapy beds." Around the world, the same thing was happening. Alien soldiers were surrendering not because they were beaten, but because human emotional complexity was too much for their minds to process. The invasion had failed, but not in any way anyone had expected. The aliens hadn't been conquered by human weapons or human technology. They had been conquered by the human soul. And now, they needed help learning how to live with the emotional chaos that humans had accidentally given them. The war was over. The real work was about to begin. 1 year later, Ji-won Kim stood in front of the newly built Interspecies Understanding Center in Seoul. The building looked like a hospital mixed with a school. Inside, humans were teaching aliens how to handle emotions they had never felt. Before the war was over, but the work was just beginning. "Dr. Kim," a reporter called out, "how many Veltari are currently receiving treatment on Earth?" Ji-won adjusted her glasses. "About 3,000. Most of the invasion force chose to stay here rather than go back to their home worlds." "Why?" "Because," Ji-won said, "once they experienced human emotions, they couldn't go back to feeling nothing. It's like they've been awakened, but they don't know how to handle being awake." Inside the center, Dr. Hana Lee sat across from Commander Zephys. The alien leader looked very different from a year ago. He was thinner, and his large black eyes seemed tired, but he was no longer shaking. "How are you feeling today?" Hana asked. Zephys thought carefully before answering. He had learned to be careful with emotions. I am sad about my soldiers who could not adapt, but I am also grateful that you helped me understand these feelings instead of letting me break. That's very good, Hana said. You're learning to feel multiple emotions at once without it hurting your mind. It is still difficult. Yesterday I watched human children playing, and I felt happy for them but also sad because I remembered being young on my own world. How do you manage feeling two opposite things? Hana smiled. Practice. Humans have been doing it for thousands of years. You're learning something that took our species a very long time to figure out. Minho Park walked through the halls of the center, checking on the progress. In one room, Veltari were learning about human art. They were trying to understand how humans could paint pictures that made people feel sad and beautiful at the same time. In another room, aliens were listening to human music. A Veltari named Keth was crying while listening to a song about missing someone who had died. But he was also smiling. Commander Park, called Sub-Commander Nexar, who now worked as a translator between humans and Veltari. May I speak with you? Of course. Nexar still looked uncomfortable, but he was much better than he had been. I wanted to thank you for not destroying us when you could have. Minho was surprised. What do you mean? When we realized that human emotions were breaking our minds, you could have used that to hurt us more. You could have made us all insane. Instead, you chose to help us heal. Minho thought about that. I guess that's just human nature too. We hurt our enemies, but we also help those who are suffering. Another contradiction, Nexar said. You are a species of contradictions. It is beautiful and terrible at the same time. Now you're starting to sound human, Minho said with a laugh. Taeyang Choi had become an instructor at the center. His job was to help young Veltari soldiers learn about human emotions. Today, he was working with a group of 10 aliens who had been on Earth for 6 months. Today we're going to talk about hope, Taeyang said. One alien raised his hand. What is hope? Hope is when you feel good about something that hasn't happened yet. Even when things are bad, you can hope they will get better. The aliens looked confused. One of them asked, but what if things don't get better? Then the hope was wrong. Maybe, Taeyang said. But hope isn't about being right. It's about giving yourself strength when you need it most. Another alien asked, can you hope for something and be afraid at the same time? Yes, Taeyang said. In fact, that's very common. You can hope for the best while preparing for the worst. The aliens spent an hour trying to understand this concept. For beings who thought in simple logic, the idea of preparing for failure while hoping for success was almost impossible to grasp. Humans are very strange, one alien finally said. Yes, Taeyang agreed. We are. And that strangeness saved our world. In her research lab, Ji-won was working on the most important project of her career. She was trying to create a guide for other alien species who might encounter humans in the future. The document was called A Warning and Guide to Human Emotional Complexity. It had been requested by 17 different alien civilizations who had heard about what happened to the Veltari. The introduction read, humans are the only known species that can feel multiple contradictory emotions simultaneously without mental breakdown. This ability makes them extremely dangerous to species who think in simple emotional patterns. Approach with extreme caution, but Ji-won was also writing a second section. However, if approached carefully and with proper preparation, human emotional complexity can be learned. Humans are willing to teach other species how to handle complex emotions, but the learning process is difficult and sometimes painful. She paused in her writing. How do you explain to aliens that humans could be their greatest enemy or their greatest teacher, depending on how you approach them? The real change came when the Veltari homeworld sent a message to Earth. They wanted to make a deal. The message was simple. Our worlds are still dying. We still need resources. But we understand now that we cannot take them by force. We offer trade, our technology for your resources, and we offer payment for something else. Teach our people how to feel the way humans feel. The response from Earth was even simpler. Come in peace, and we will help you. Within 6 months, the first Veltari students arrived on Earth. Not soldiers, but civilians who wanted to learn about human emotions. They came knowing that the process would be difficult and sometimes painful, but they also came knowing that humans would help them through it. 2 years after the invasion, Commander Zephys stood with Dr. Hannah Lee on the roof of the treatment center. They were watching human children play in a park below. "Dr. Lee," he said, "I have a question that has bothered me for months." "What is it? Why did your people choose to help us instead of destroying us?" "We came to take your world. We would have made you slaves or killed you. Yet when we broke down, you healed us. Why?" Hannah watched the children running and laughing. Some were human. Some were young Veltari who were learning to play human games. "Because," she said, "that's what humans do. We fight when we have to, but when the fighting is over, we try to heal what was broken, even our enemies." "Another contradiction," Zephys said. "The most important one," Hannah replied. "We are strong enough to hurt our enemies, but wise enough to help them when they need it." Zephys nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that human contradictions weren't weaknesses or mistakes. They were what made humans both dangerous and wonderful. "Dr. Lee," he said, "what will happen when other species learn about what happened here?" Hannah smiled. "Some will be smart and approach us carefully. Others will think they can succeed where you failed. And some will be wise enough to come as friends from the beginning. And if they come as enemies?" Hannah's smile became less warm. "Then they'll learn the same lesson you did. Humans are very good at turning our pain into weapons, but we're even better at turning our enemies into friends." That evening, Jiwan finished her report to the global government. The title was simple: The Human Advantage. The conclusion read, "Humanity's ability to weaponize our own emotional complexity makes us nearly impossible to conquer through conventional means. However, this same complexity makes us excellent teachers and healers for species who are willing to learn from us peacefully. Recommendation: establish Earth as the galaxy's center for emotional education and psychological healing. Our greatest weakness has become our greatest strength. Our pain has become our power, and our enemies have become our students." She sent the report and leaned back in her chair. Outside her window, she could see human and Veltari workers building new facilities together. The invasion had failed completely, but from that failure had come something better than victory. The aliens had come looking for resources to save their dying worlds. Instead, they had found something more valuable. They had found teachers who could help them learn to live with the complexity of being truly alive. And in teaching the aliens how to feel, humans had learned something too. Their greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their technology. Their greatest strength was their ability to feel everything, survive it, and still choose to help others, even the ones who had tried to destroy them. That, more than anything else, was what made humans truly dangerous and truly beautiful.